when I was driving the bus out here in Las Vegas, I was doing a route called the 214, which was and still is the D Street and the 8th Street. There was a young man who used to get on my bus all the time. And I knew that he was doing something. But one particular night, when he got off the bus, he stood outside the bus door after I let him off, and he looked at me. And he said, "Dave, I listened to you talk on the bus about a lot of things." And he said, "I really need to get my life together." He said, "I'm struggling with drugs, Dave." He said, "I know that you see that, but you never mentioned it." And he said, "Sometimes I wish you would have mentioned it." He said, "But I'm letting you know that I'm getting ready to go through withdrawal." And he said, "I'm not going to go into any institution that's going to help me withdraw." He said, "Because to me, that's not withdrawal." He said, "Withdrawal is when you honestly do it yourself and not the help from any other drug that makes the withdrawal easier." He said, "I don't want the easy way out." And he broke down and he cried. He said, "I'm getting ready to go through this withdrawal." And he said, "The next time you see me, it's either going to be in the casket or you're going to be looking at a man who is no longer a drug addict." And he walked away. 7.5 months later, I saw him again. And he looked much better. And he said to me, "I'm clean, Dave. I've gotten over my drug addiction." And he said, "You know what?" He said, "That house that I used to go in all the time to get my drugs," he said, "I won't even walk down that street anymore." He said, "I don't even want to go in that place anymore." He said, "I'm afraid to go in there." I told him, "Well, then you're not done. You're still an addict." And he thought that I was playing devil's advocate. And most would seem as though that's exactly what I was doing, but I wasn't. I told him, "You want to know when you are no longer an addict?" He said, "What's that?" I said, "If you can go down that block and no longer feel tempted to go in there, then you're on your way there." He said, "What do you mean feel tempted to go in there?" I told him there's a dual component to everything. You either feel tempted to go in there and use, or you feel tempted to go in there so that you can help others to get out. I said, "Are you ready to do that or the other?" I said, "Where is your heart in terms of this?" I said, "You can't be afraid to walk down that street. You have to know that you're no longer an addict. You can't just believe it." I said, "You have to know it, bro. And you will never know until you walk through those doors again." And he looked at me and he said, "Bro, you're an evil dude." He said, I see this other side of you." And he walked away. 3 weeks later, he came to me. He said, "Dave, Dave, I want to apologize to you about something. I said, what's that? He said, I called you the devil. He said, but I found myself walking down that street. I said, what do you mean you found yourself walking down the street? He said, I found myself walking down that street. He said, what you told me obviously had some type of subconscious effect on me. And so I found myself walking down the street. And he said, the temptation was not to go in and use again. He said, because I felt so free and I felt so proud of my progress that the temptation was not to go use, but to free others as I strive to free myself. And I asked him, I said, did you do it? He said, no, but I will. I had my off days the next 2 nights, and then when I came to work, I didn't see him on my first day back to work, but I saw him on my second day. And he got on my bus and he immediately smiled at me and he shook my hand and he gave me a white rose. Now, as odd as this may sound, this is what happened. He rode around with me, and see, the 214 goes all through the west side, and then it used to go downtown to this place called the DTC, of where all the buses would pause and everyone would take their 20-minute break. So we rode all the way downtown, and you know, a lot of people on the bus was talking that stuff, because here's a black man who gave another black man a white rose. And of course, where our minds are in the black community is understandably in a state of misunderstanding with those when those type of things transpire. So it didn't upset me, because at the moment I didn't even understand. However, I knew that he was victorious in some area of his life, and I could only guess that he finally walked in that house where he used to get his drugs. And so once we got downtown, he said, do you have time to take a walk with me? And I told him yes. And so we went to the back of the building of where we take our break. And he said, I walked in the place where I used to use drugs. And he said, when I got in there, I saw who I was through the other people. I said, how did you feel? He said, I felt sorry for them, and I wanted to help them get out of there. I said, that's all you felt? He said, yeah. I said, bro, I shook his hand. Now you're clean. You're not an addict anymore. I said, you know how people always say, I've been clean for 3 months, 2 weeks, and 3 days? I said, if you could narrow it down that precisely, you're still an addict. If you refuse to go into the same environment in which you conform to the degree that you started exercising a sense of self-destruction, then that refusing, that resistance is just as equivalent as a temptation. See, when you resist something, a part of you is in the process of tempting it. And so there's a struggle going on. So resisting something, it only implies something is going on in you as a form of temptation to go back in that direction. And that's where the resistance is coming from, the conflict. You're still in conflict. But once he was able to walk in there and love himself to the degree to where he was able to feel love for everyone else in there and wanted the best for them, because he was a manifestation of him accomplishing of what was best for himself. That's how you become a winner. Not running from your flaws, not running from what had you captive, but running towards it and conquering it like you did the first day when you decided to face it, get through it. And even after you stop it, you deal with the aftermath of the temptation to go back. And even after you've gotten to the point to where you're no longer dealing with that temptation to go back, because sometimes we bump into situations in life to where we have disappointments and things happen in society that make us angry and frustrated, and sometimes the mind tries to influence you because of your disappointments and your hurt to go back to the vice that was destroying you. But love sets in for that state of yourself. Love sets in, and that keeps you moving forward. Go and sin no more. The experience with the guy who I knew while I was driving the bus, in terms of his plight of getting himself off of drugs. Part of that video, when I was talking about the resistance and how it relates to temptation, that was brought to me by way of an email that this sister wrote me, and she wanted me to explain that a little bit more. And so I told her that I would try to go over that again, because it's something that a lot of people and pastors, to my knowledge, they've never taught this in the church community when I was out there in the 90s. But you know how it was mentioned that if you're in a process of resisting something, the conflict of resisting something itself, it only implies that there's a part of you that is tempted of holding on to that which you are in struggle of resisting. You know how it says, resist the devil and he will flee from you. I've never agreed with that because resisting the devil, it only implies that there's a part of you in which is made tempted by the devil, which causes the struggle of resistance. And as I said before, there is no agency outside of yourself that anyone should consider the devil. I think, and I've always felt that everyone should take responsibility for their own struggles with themselves. And, there was a comedian that my mother used to date. He went under the name Flip Wilson. He had made famous this saying that was very popular back in the 70s. The devil made me do it. See, that's not taking responsibility for your own conscious actions when you do something deliberately that is labeled demonic, or you are not willing to take responsibility for the mistakes that you made, that in the mistakes that were performed by you are considered morally demonic. You have to take responsibility for everything. As the scripture says, I created good, I created evil. I, the Lord, created all of these things. And so I tell many that the devil, this demonic force, is sitting up in all of us. It's not anything that is an outside agency convincing you to do anything. There is a divine and a demonic presence sitting up inside of all of us. And as we move forward in our life journey, and we come upon situations, whether they're tempting or whatever the case may be, if you know what's right and wrong, and if you can perceive that this situation is evil, you just keep moving forward. But when it comes to the point to where you have to resist it, it only means that there's something sitting up inside of you that is considering it. And you have to go through this whole conflict of convincing yourself that you should let it go and move forward. However, when one understands and knows the facts of certain challenges, there is no resistance. It's a clear perception of what is right. And you just move forward, and you don't have to deal with the resistance. And it says resistance derives from the presence and power of temptation. And that is a fact. And resistance and the entity of temptation works in harmony, because even temptation has an intellect of its own. It tries to convince you that your conscious decision is going to be beneficial. I mean, it's the same as your evil side comes upon a situation. And like, say you have a disagreement with your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your wife and your husband, and the communication is not going very well. Frustration sets in. Anger sets in. Let's just say, let's just begin with anger. Anger sets in. And then the time element goes where there's conflict. And then frustration sets in. And then your demonic side tells you to get physical with the other person. Do this to that person, do that to that person. See, our demonic side suggests things. It suggests things to our minds. And the only time that we act out on the demonic suggestions of our dark side is when we make a conscious decision to act upon the will of our dark side, and we go in harmony with what our evil side suggests, and we commit the act. Everything is with us. Everything derives within us, and everything comes from us in terms of our actions. This devil that's making you do things is you. The divine in you that prevents you from executing demonic influences is also you. We are created dual beings from a creator that is a creative dual force of both good and evil. It says here in my notes, resistance reveals that you are in fact still tempted by what you in truth have not yet let go of. It's like my brother said that he was walking down the street. He said he found himself walking down the street. That means he was consciously unaware that he had decided to go down that street. And this is and suddenly his mind became conscious that he was walking down that street. So this is why he said, I found myself walking down that street. And I looked over at the home to where I used to do drugs. And I found myself resisting it. And therefore he was tempted to go in there. And so temptation suggests resistance goes against the wishes of temptation. And there's a dual component with temptation, to where there's a fear factor. And what I mean by that is if you were in his shoes and you were walking, you found yourself walking down the street, and you noticed the house that you used to do drugs in. It's right across the street, and you're looking at it. Are you tempted to go in there to, again, use drugs? Or are you tempted to go in there to help others liberate themselves the same way that you liberated, that you liberated yourself? So where does resistance kick in at that moment? The fear of doing such. The fear of going in there, helping people to get out of that situation, or the fear of going in there and falling back into the clutches of addiction. So what is meant by this is that when you are indeed in the state of after death, of letting go of the entire dilemma, and you take full responsibility for yourself, there's no more temptation and there's no more resistance. You're not resisting anymore because you're no longer tempted. If you are tempted, your motivation is to do the right thing and not to get back into the clutches of what had you enslaved. I'm hoping that this is being explained effectively. Some more notes. Resistance implies that you have not let go completely to be able to turn from what wickedness still has you in bondage, which is self-explanatory. Resistance implies that you have not let go completely. I'm resisting it because I'm still tempted to perform what previously had me on the road of self-destruction. So once love sets in, you no longer feel tempted by those demonic forces because you're no longer resisting them. And there's no fear factor. And so you walk towards your demonic self and you embrace it and you grow to understand it. That way you may be liberated from it. That's how you're liberated from it. I mean, it was the same as Yeshua. When he was faced with fear in the Garden of Gethsemane. And at first, he wanted to run from fear. He wanted the cup to be passed to someone else. Can this cup be passed from me? And obviously the Creator said, no, you must learn this because you have to understand fear and you need to know what fear's intention is in order for you to conquer it. And once you conquered fear by understanding it in clarity, only then can you move forward because it no longer has any effects on you. And therefore, you will never find yourself resisting it or being tempted by it. You're free. You're free from it. That's the point. Resisting the devil and he will flee from you. No such thing. We have to take responsibility for whatever conscious decision that we make. And our conscious decision is based upon our state of morality, whether it's divine or demonic. At that particular time, your conscious choice is going to be one or the other. So through meditation, I saw temptation and resisting working in harmony in their own state of dual components, even the resisting. I mean, you can go in the environment like my friend did, and he could have easily said, all the time that I was in there, I was resisting it. If you were in there resisting it, it still implies that you had a sense of temptation to go back to using drugs. But once self-love came in, that made him powerful. You know how in Star Wars, the Emperor had told Luke Skywalker Your hate has made you powerful. That's a lie. And when Vader was fighting him in The Empire Strikes Back, he said, Obi-Wan has taught you well. You have controlled your fear. Now, release your anger. Only your hatred can destroy me. Lies. Lies. Hatred? That's not powerful. Love is powerful. As my friend grew to love himself to the degree to where he let go of the use of drugs and he faced himself. And the more he grew to love himself, gave him the power to let go. To let go. The point of withdrawal, you're resisting because you're still struggling with the effects of it. But you love yourself enough to suffer through it until the resistance is no more. But when you go back out, now you're dealing with temptation. Now you're dealing with the entity of temptation. What are you going to do? Are you going to resist it? Resist what? Going back to use drugs? Fear and all of those things? No. If you resist it, it means you're still connected to it. You're trying to run from it. You need to grow to understand it. Understand its intentions and its effects and move forward. That's how you conquer it. You conquer it with the love of self. You conquer it with self-love. That's how it's conquered. My friend loved himself. And that's the reason why he survived, and he lives this day. And he's out there driving trucks right now. I didn't have to suffer seeing him again laying in a casket. He got on my bus one day and told me that he's going to school to drive trucks. And he looked like himself. He didn't look like he was struggling with something anymore because he was no longer struggling with himself. Until he made up his mind. He said, I don't want to struggle with this no more. So I'm going to face this and I'm going to go through the withdrawing period. Until he came to realize that even though he made it through the withdrawing period, he still had another challenge, and that challenge was himself. Are you able to go back in that environment and not conform to the wicked vices of drug use? Are you able to go in there and see yourself through those people and have enough love inside of you to take your time to help them get out of it? Because you became that example of being able to get yourself out of it for their sake. Sounds like Calvary, huh? He suffered all of that for us. He died to fear, and that's why he made it to the cross. He suffered pain, anguish, and even death for us. And we can do that for one another, but we have to do it within our own selves first. You know how the saying says, charity begins at home and then it spreads abroad? It's not only talking about a house, it's talking about this is home, the human being. It starts first by way of being an example to self-preservation. Move forward and end your plight of self-destruction. Die to who you were and allow yourself to be born again by the divine into the spirit. Be born again. Allow yourself. You know, like they said, let this mind be in you as was in Yeshua the Christ. What's the key word? Let. See, it's still your responsibility. Let this mind be in you. So what do you mean, let this mind? Allow it to be. It's a be attitude within you as was in Yeshua the Christ. It's still a conscious choice of the human being. Let it. This is available. This is something made available to you to conform to. Let this mind be in you. This is how you're going to be saved. You have to choose to save self. Choose to save self. That's what it's about. And this last note, I'll read it again. Resistance implies that you have not let go completely to be able to turn from what wickedness still has you in bondage. As I say again, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and heal the land. It's a conscious choice that's given to us for our benefit. Choice. Freedom of choice. You can either accept it or reject it. And everything depends upon love for self. And with that being said, I'm pretty certain that I've left something out. And as you know me, if it comes to me, I'm just going to make another video. So I will say this though, and I don't usually say this because I give people a chance to make up their own minds. But if you enjoy these videos, just leave me a like and subscribe if you will, because that's just going to help my channel. And it's not my message, it's the message, you know, because when you go to a lot of these churches, a lot of the ways that the preachers distribute the message, they put Yeshua way up in the clouds and they make Yeshua seem superhuman, and even the movies make him look as a magician. You know, he touched the man's eyes, and you know, he was a blind man and now he sees. It meant that he was ignorant to his life journey, and Yeshua came and he gave him clarity on how to move forward. It was nothing, you know, literal like that. Everything has symbolic meaning. And if you understand that a lot of the things in the Bible about him are not, you know, just physical. I mean, everything has a symbolic meaning to it. And if the pastors would teach it symbolically and spiritually, then a lot of people who attend these institutions would be able to relate a lot of everyday challenges in their life, and you won't feel so out of touch. They make Yeshua superhuman when he was very human. He was very human. You're definitely able to relate if you take your time and you educate yourself and you study yourself. Study yourself. And each day, learn of your flaws, die of your flaws. Learn of your sense of goodness and execute it. As I said before, I'm pretty certain that I left something out, but hopefully this was understood. I'll have to listen to it and make some adjustments. Hopefully I won't have to make adjustments. I'm hoping that I dealt with this effectively, because it sounds complicated, but it's not. And I tried to give it as plain as possible, but the whole thing is, when you find yourself resisting something, that conflict inside that you're resisting something, it only implies that there's something sitting up inside of you that is feeling tempted towards what you are resisting. So you have to go into meditation or prayer or whatever way that you try to communicate to the Creator to give you clarity and guidance, and find out, what is it about this particular challenge that I'm tempted to involve myself in demonically? But my better side is resisting it. Find out where your temptations are. Instead of, like the Holy Spirit, lead me not into temptation, but to deliver me from evil. The evil's within yourself. See, religion has always taught everyone to look outside of themselves. Yet still, Yeshua said the kingdom of heaven is within you. He said, go into your closet and pray. But you lining up. You want the pastor to put hands on you. You asking someone else to pray for me. Girl, I need you to pray for me. No, you need you to pray for you. All of this, oh, be patient with me. God is not through with me yet. No, you're not through with you yet. You're the problem. All of this foolishness that you hear. Jesus, take the wheel. Stop playing. Y'all play too much. You play too much. And you know you play too much. It only means you're not taking your walk seriously. But everything derives within you. Everything. If there is a devil, it is us. It's the demonic nature of ourselves. And this is the way that we were created. Now I'm going to bring one more thing up. There was a movie that came out in the 80s. It was a movie called Legend, and it had Tom Cruise in it. And there was a part where he was fighting this big demon figure, and this big vacuum started sucking this demonic demon out of where they were fighting. And before he went into this big vacuum, darkness, he said, Father, protect me. He was talking about this theological Satan, while he was this devil working for Satan. But he said, Father, protect me. And as he was being removed from the area, he clawed the side of the wall. And he looked at Tom Cruise, his character, and he started laughing. He said, you think you have won. He said, what is light without dark? And he laughed at him. Then he said, I am a part of you all. He said, you can never defeat me. We are brothers eternal. Even though that came out of a demonic character, it's true. It's true about every single human being. You think you have won? No, you will never defeat your demonic side until you are risen into the spirit. And a whole lot of us have not yet found out or experienced that in totality. He said, you think you've won? He said, what is light without dark? And therefore, what is goodness without evil? Because they both give identity to one another. And he laughed, basically saying, fools. He said, I am a part of you all. So he said evil is a part of good, because without good, there would be no evil. And without evil, there would be no good. I created war. I created peace. I created war. I created good. I created evil. I, the Lord, created all of these things. He said, you can never defeat me. Never. We are brothers eternal. This is why this life journey is complicated. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend as though I have the answer, because I don't. Living this dual existence is the challenge of life itself. But it makes living a whole lot more, I would say, less complicated if we take responsibility for our own actions and stop pointing the finger at everyone else, or continue to blame this theological character named Satan and the devil, which is really you and me. It's us. It's us and our conscious choices, the duels, the good choices, the bad choices. And we need them in order to learn of ourselves. Now, with that being said, I'm going to let this go for right now. I may touch on it again, but everyone have a good evening. And as I always say, stay human. Have a good night.